with another NFL free agency live stream reactions, the latest news, the latest signings. I'm going to break every single one of these signings down, give you my analysis, my thoughts on every move today, March 20th, 2020. And we're going to have some fun in the live chat. You can ask me any questions you like there in the live chat. If you're watching this after the fact, make sure you comment below what your thoughts are on the moves today. Maybe your team made a move. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Before we do get right into some of these signings, make sure that you guys do show your support for the channel and Gronk spike the like button. If you are new and finding me for the first time, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL free agency reactions just like this one. All right, so again, get in that comment section. Let me know what you think. Let me know any of these moves. Todd Gurley, whether it's Eric Ebron. Let me know what your favorite move of the day was, March 20th, 2020. So we'll just wait for people to get in here. But really, this was a good day. I think it was a more fascinating day than yesterday, because yesterday we had the news of Todd Gurley getting released, and there was maybe the rumors of him potentially getting traded, but no takers. So he was released. We were waiting today for the official decision on where he would go. Some reported it might be the Dolphins. Some reported it might be the Bucks, but Atlanta made a lot of sense. So we're going to start with that move, but I do kind of want to wait until more people get in here, because then they're just going to say, what do you think about Todd Gurley? So I don't want to get into it right away before a bunch of people come in. So that was a really big move. Of course, Eric Ebron signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe a little bit of a shocker to some people. I feel like Eric Ebron, there was a market for tight ends, and I don't necessarily know if a lot of people thought that the Steelers would be one of the teams interested in a free agent tight end, but they were kind of one that snuck under the radar. It almost has me thinking, okay, what's going to happen with Vance McDonald? Is he going to stay on the Steelers? Is somebody going to try and trade for him, or are they going to straight up release him? So Vance McDonald's future is kind of up in question now that Eric Ebron's been signed. Maybe the Steelers are looking to utilize more two tight end sets in their offense with McDonald. I know they had Vannett as well, who's also a free agent, so possibly they wanted to just upgrade that tight end position. Being that Eric Ebron's been in a lot of two tight end sets in his career, that will be interesting. So I'll get into that move as well. Of course, Atlanta did release Devonta Freeman not too long ago, so he's still on the market with some of these free agent running backs. Now, Melvin Gordon has signed with the Broncos. He is going to probably be the next one that we hear from, Devonta Freeman. Melvin Gordon ended up going to the Broncos, so I'm going to talk about that. That was a big move in the AFC West. Of course, you're needing to compete with Patrick Mahomes and score points, so the more weapons, the better. So that's going to be interesting, and an awesome combination between him and Landry. The Bucks picked up a offensive lineman in Haeg from the Indianapolis Colts. So that's an interesting move, kind of a low radar one. Andrew Sendejo did sign with the Browns. So that's another move that I do like, and I'll get into why I like that move. And really, I think that was about it. And the Patriots signed a fullback. There was a trade also from the Ravens to the Steelers, which is one of the weirdest things I've ever heard in my life. I never thought that would ever happen, the Steelers and the Ravens making a trade, but there was a trade. Wormley, the defensive lineman, was traded from the Ravens to the Steelers, so we're going to get into that. And also, I forgot, Ha Clinton-Dix signed with the Dallas Cowboys last night, so we're going to talk about that. Not as many signings today, not as many moves today, but a lot bigger names. You know, you're talking about Gurley, you're talking about Gordon, you're talking about Ebron. These are big names. These are big fantasy names, big NFL names. So we're going to get into all that, as well as your questions. So let's just start off with the opening questions that you guys have, and then we'll move into more of the signings, because I don't have as many today. I probably won't be on for 2 to 3 hours tonight like the other ones, but we'll try to make it as, because I haven't really been able to get to as many questions because I've had to cover so many signings in the last couple of videos. So I want to hear some more questions and get feedback from you guys as well. So we're going to go with the questions first, and we'll check out what the chat has to say. Again, guys, if you haven't already, if you're just entering, Gronk spike the like button. Get as many people in here as possible. Okay, so Jazzman says Tom Brady is a Buccaneer. Yes, he is. Justin says hi. David says, what do you think of the Bears moves? So far, what have the Bears even done? I'm trying to think. Well, Nick Foles, obviously. That was a big one. I made a video. I think I made a video about all their moves. But Nick Foles was the big one. And I kind of was fascinated to see what they would do in terms of the quarterback position. Are they going to stick with Mitch Trubisky? Were they going to sign Cam Newton? Were they going to trade for somebody? And they went with Nick Foles. I think that's an interesting move because he does have a little bit of experience within that offense. And I do think he can be successful there with Matt Nagy. But my question is, I just don't know if Nick Foles is a huge upgrade over Mitch Trubisky. Totally different type of quarterbacks. But I just don't know if Nick Foles is just destined to be not a great quarterback. Other than a couple of miracle runs that he's had in his career, he really hasn't done much of substance away from Philadelphia. Maybe part of it was just the Eagles and how talented they were that season, going to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, even the year after, having so much talent on the offensive line and the defense being so good. That obviously will help a quarterback and win games as well. So that was really the big one from the Bears. I'm trying to think of the other ones that they had. For some reason, it's slipping my mind. I don't think they re-signed Danny Trevathan. They let Kwiatkowski go. Oh, yeah, they brought in Robert Quinn. I talked about that one. That almost seems like it was 2 years ago. That's how many moves have happened. But I like that one. I do think it's a little bit of an overpay for the Chicago Bears because Robert Quinn has kind of been mediocre besides last year. If you can get the Robert Quinn that you got last year from the Cowboys, then that's a great signing. But he's also going into his 30s now. I get the move because the Bears are kind of in this win now window, so they want to maximize it and get as much out of their defense as possible. And him and Khalil Mack potentially are a deadly combination. But I do see the downside to that move as well. If it doesn't go right and he doesn't play like he did in Dallas, then you could probably have a big contract on your hands that doesn't really work out. So that was a risky move. Yeah, so the Bears are interesting. I think really what it comes down to for them is they're going to have a good defense. I think they just lost Ha Clinton-Dix, but it's really up to the quarterback position for me with the Bears. That's really going to dictate how well they do this season. Rich G says Buffalo's making power moves. One Pride says, how did the Lions do in free agency? So far, so good for the Lions. I wouldn't say it's been spectacular, but they've made some pretty solid moves. How about them Bills? Todd says hi. Julian says BLV, BLV, BLV. Colin says Seth and Farrell Cooper with we shopping at Dollar General. Yeah, I know. I didn't even write those down as potential moves. But that's really what the Panthers have been doing is they're really signing these like no-name players to contracts. I don't know if that's part of a rebuild, if that's part of finding these talents that they feel like maybe fit their scheme at a very low rate. I really don't know because these guys are like special teamers or like backups at the most for most of the moves that the Panthers have made so far. One Pride says, why has nobody picked up Clowney? I think because of the price. I think because he's been asking for so much money. I do think at this point he probably ends up back in Seattle. That's probably what ends up happening, if I'm being honest there. Okay, what else we have? Peppa says, also, what do you think of the whole Broncos offseason so far? Bouye, Glasgow, Casey, Gordon, for example. There's a lot of big names, a lot of good players there, and they're definitely dishing out the money. But, I mean, when you look at it, they got better. They've gotten better in pretty much every area that they've signed someone. It's interesting because they let Chris Harris go for Bouye, so that's pretty much a toss-up there. But they got better on the offensive line with Glasgow in for Ronald Leary for sure. Casey is the best defensive lineman they've had in a while, I would say, since like Malik Jackson was in his prime. And I don't know if they're going to re-sign Derek Wolfe. I don't know. It doesn't really look like it. He's been kind of shopping around with other teams. But Melvin Gordon is definitely going to give them another running back. And I think he's going to complement Phillip Lindsay. We'll get into that. Rick Badboy says, I bet you Quinn doesn't get 8 sacks next season. Rick Badboy with the predictions. Bills' defensive line is going to be fire this year. One Pride says, if you had to grade the Lions F8 class, what would you give it? Honestly, I've been covering so many signings, I can't remember what every team has done. For the most part, I can remember that they got Vitae on the offensive line. They didn't really do anything in terms of offensive weapons yet. They might bring in a running back. Defensively, they've signed Collins. They traded for Harmon. They signed Danny Shelton. They released Devin Kennard. They traded Slay and signed Trufant. I mean, they've lost some good players as well, which is the thing. I mean, Mike Daniels is in free agency. Slay was traded. They lost Glasgow. So it's kind of like they're kind of staying afloat right now. I don't really see any area where they got significantly better yet. I think once we get to the draft and you add those draft picks onto what they've done, then I feel like the depth of their team has gotten better. I think that was their main goal. For some of these players that they've let go, like Slay, for example, they're saving that money, investing in Trufant at a lesser price, who's pretty good himself, and then you maybe get another corner on top of that to add to the secondary, or another safety or whatever it may be. So I like their move so far, but I also have to put into perspective that they've lost some good players. So I would probably say they're somewhere in the B range, but I think that will go up as we continue to go, because I think the Lions are not done. I think they're going to continue to sign a lot of lower tier guys, which is a typical kind of Patriot thing to do. So we'll have to see what they do there. Rich G says, what do you think of the Bills signing of Quentin Jefferson? I made a video on that, so go check it out. Denver says, longtime fan, bro. Let's talk about the Broncos. FYI, Lindsey going nowhere, new offense, and staff looking sick. Yes, the Broncos are an exciting team. I just kind of talked about them a second ago, but I want to see them fill out the rest of their defensive line. I feel like maybe the draft, they'll add again to their offensive line and maybe center. I don't know if they signed a center. I don't remember, but Glasgow, I think, is going to play guard. So they probably need to draft a center, seeing as how McGovern went to the Jets. Defensively, I think they're solid, but I do feel like they still need to add to their secondary at corner to add some depth there. They have Callahan. They have, what's his name? Bouye. But I feel like they need that other guy. Maybe I'm missing somebody, but I think they need that third, fourth corner. They need the depth at the position. Linebacker-wise, they're good. Did they sign somebody at linebacker? I feel like they did. Am I missing something? I feel like they did. Depending on the draft, will you be surprised if Miami and Buffalo are to win the AFC East? I'd be surprised if Miami won the AFC East. I wouldn't be surprised if Buffalo did. I think they're considered the favorite. But I honestly, right now, I wouldn't count out the Patriots just yet, because they have Bill Belichick. They still have a really good defense. So I think the Patriots right now, if I had to guess, are probably somewhere in the average range. I think they're going to be like an 8-8 team right now, but they'll probably continue to get better because they just always add these small free agents. The Jets, though, I'm not a huge fan of what they've done so far. I just don't think they've done enough, and I could see the Jets finishing last in the division. I think right now, if I had to rank it, I'd probably go first Bills, second Patriots, third Dolphins, fourth Jets. That's kind of how I feel it's going to go. Bodo with the $25 donation. Thank you, Bodo. Bro, at this time, you can donate all you want. I'll appreciate it, but save your money. You know, we're going through a tough time right now in the world. So if you guys, I understand if you're saving your money out there. But thank you, Bodo. He says, what's up? I'm working, so I won't be on very long. Just had a short break. All right, Bodo, thank you for that. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for joining, and thank you for being a supporter for a long time. Appreciate it. One Pride says, well, looks the Lions will draft Okuda. I think that would be a great draft pick, and it would kind of fulfill their secondary. Rick Badboy says, Mitch, thoughts on Dolphins aiming to trade up for Burrows rumors? I haven't heard any of that, but if that does happen, I wouldn't be shocked because they have the capital and the draft to do so. And, there's been those rumors floating out that Burrows may not want to play for the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, there's been those constant, thoughts thrown around. So if those two things kind of line up, it definitely could happen. I wouldn't rule it out 100%, but I don't think the chance is very high as well. Dakota says the Broncos definitely fleeced the Titans. Oh, yeah, for sure. That was a great trade. Bodo says, I'm a truck driver that delivers food. I'm considered essential. Okay, there you go. I'll be working even if the rest of the world turns into zombies. Hey, at least you'll be on the road away from the zombies in a big-ass truck, so you'll be fine, I guess. Browns fan says the Browns for Everson Griffin and Clay Matthews. I don't like the Clay Matthews fit. I think Everson Griffin would be an awesome fit, though. I like the Broncos offense. Yes, Broncos offense is getting better. I think a lot of it depends on the O-line improving and Locke. But I do kind of believe in Locke. I'm not going to full out say that I'm a huge fan, but I think he can be a pretty good quarterback. One Pride says only other player I see them drafting is Simmons. Yeah, that could happen, but I do feel that's a little high. If that happens, I feel like they're going to trade back to get him. Turtle says, I honestly think the Lions should trade down with the Chargers. They draft Tua, and Detroit can still get Okuda as 6, while also maybe getting a player and a second. See, I haven't really dove headfirst into the quarterback film yet, but I don't think that there's too much of a distance between Tua and Herbert, in my opinion. Just from what I've seen from them, I feel like Herbert's very gifted from a physical standpoint, and Tua also has the injury concern. So we'll have to see, because this whole coronavirus thing is affecting the way that teams are looking and scouting players and the way that they're able to handle their physicals as well. So that might actually end up impacting Tua to the point where he falls in the draft. So we'll see what happens with Tua. Colin says Henry Ruggs is going to the Broncos. I do feel like a receiver would be a good pick if they feel like one is in their range. Dakota says Melvin Gordon is now a Bronco with the 1-2 punch of him and Phillip Lindsay. Bronco offense is going to have a significant improvement. I was never a Freeman guy, so I'll agree with you there. Mim says Eric Robinson, cornerback, most underrated player in the draft. There we go. That's his take. Any news on Clowney? Not that I've heard of, other than the fact that it's looking more and more likely that he's going to go to Seattle. Okay, I feel like we should get started with these signings. So let's start off with Todd Gurley, because that's going to be fun. All right. What was the money like? Let me check this quick. 7.5, 6 million. Okay. Todd Gurley is returning home. The former Georgia running back is back in Georgia with the Atlanta Falcons. He's going to start at running back for Atlanta in 2020. Todd Gurley, he's going to make money from 2 different teams this year, so really where he went or the money he was going to get from a team on the open market was going to be a little bit less from that team, because the team knows that he's going to get money, and Gurley might as well go after the fit. And I feel like the fit is pretty good in Atlanta. I do think this is an upgrade over Devontae Freeman, but the thing with Gurley is always injuries, and will his body hold up? That is the biggest question with him. But looking at the contracts or the money, the way it's going to be sorted and what Gurley's actually going to get, according to the people in the know, the Rams will pay him $7.5 million, Atlanta will pay him $6 million, and there will be an offset minus of $2.5 million. So then the total earnings for Gurley will be $11 million. It keeps Gurley as one of the 3 highest paid running backs in the NFL, at least for this season. So Gurley will be happy about that. He gets to maintain his reputation, and he gets to go home in the process. I also feel like maybe with Todd, maybe with Gurley, that there might be a little bit of some sour feelings surrounding the LA Rams and their organization and the way that they have kind of gone about his whole injury situation. I could be completely off on that, and maybe the divorce wasn't as sour as it came across. But I do feel like Gurley, he did say it was just about business on Twitter, so that's the way he's going to take it. Classy move. But I do think there's that a little bit of the chip on the shoulder for him going into 2020, considering that the way they got rid of him, and just releasing a running back after 2 years ago. I mean, he was maybe the best in the game, and that's not easy to handle for any pro athlete, to be so good at your position, get paid and rewarded with this giant contract, and then all of a sudden you're released. You're on the open market, and you're not wanted by your team, by the team that drafted you, by the team that paid you, by the team that you lifted to go to the Super Bowl. It's kind of, I feel like for Gurley might be an embarrassing feeling, but also a feeling of, okay, I need to prove the people wrong, and I need to go out there this season and put on a show. So for Atlanta, they're getting a guy with a massive chip on his shoulder and a player that is wanting to prove to everybody that he still got it. So looking at his statistics last season, it actually wasn't as bad as some people may make you think. I mean, looking at his stats, 223 rushes, which was the lowest of his career, 857 yards, not bad, near 900 yards, 12 touchdowns on the ground, 14 in total. He did have 31 catches for 207 yards, 6.7 yards per reception, which was also the lowest of his career. And his yards per attempt was 3.8, which is under 4, which isn't considered to be anything great, as the dogs go off in the background. But 55.3 yards per game in 2016, 57.1 in 2019. So technically, statistically, this actually wasn't the worst season from Todd Gurley. In his second season, at 22 years old, with less of an injury history or injury issue, he actually had a worse statistical season, and he only put up half the touchdowns. So, I mean, you're looking at it from this perspective. Is it Todd Gurley? Is he just not as good as we thought he was? Is it actually the injuries? Was it the offensive line? I feel like there's so many things that kind of join together in this situation, and it's like, I don't know. What is Atlanta really getting? Are they getting an elite running back if healthy? Are they getting an elite running back if healthy? Or is he not even an elite running back if he is actually healthy? Now, the way I look at it is Todd Gurley is a good running back. I think I would still put him around the top 12 in the league. At the very least, I mean, there's a lot of good running backs in this league right now, so it's kind of hard to say. And it also really is dictated by offensive line play. It's dictated by offensive coordinators. It's dictated by a lot of things. I feel like the running back position, more than any other position in the NFL, you succeed based on your situation. And I feel like that's why the running back position is so kind of, you can just get rid of any running back and you can fill him in. Like, look at Damian Williams and what he has done for Kansas City. He was the Super Bowl hero, arguably, for the Chiefs, especially their offense. And he was like off the street, and Andy Reid took him in, and now he's like considered a really good all-around running back who can catch the football. He can run it. He's got explosive speed. He's tough to handle in the passing game. So a lot of it is scheme, and I want to see how Gurley fits within Atlanta's scheme this season. I just think if they use him as a receiver the way that they used Freeman and Coleman in the past, I think he'll be fine, because I do think he's still an effective receiver, and he's effective in space with the ball in his hands. But I just don't know if he's quite the guy that he was on the ground running the football, making guys miss, breaking tackles. I don't think he has the same power. I don't think he has the same elite speed he used to, but I still think he's a good player, and I do think he's an upgrade over Devontae Freeman, who, when you look and compare both, I mean, yes, Gurley's had injury issues, and you might need to kind of have him manage his carries and manage his touches, load management if you're given an NBA term. But Devontae Freeman has also kind of had his injury issues and his injury past and has missed entire seasons for Atlanta. So you could look at it from both perspectives and say, hey, I still think Gurley is the upgrade. I still think they're getting a better running back here. And I still think it's probably worth the money. Considering it's only like 1 year, it's a good deal. Because if he is truly done, Atlanta can just move on from him. But if he cashes in and he has a great season, that's going to be hugely beneficial for Todd Gurley. And he's betting on himself with this deal. So Todd Gurley to the Atlanta Falcons. Does this shift the power in the NFC South? No. It's a running back. You know how I feel about running backs. It's not going to shift an overall team in terms of wins and losses. It might shift a little bit in terms of their explosive ability on offense, but Atlanta was already explosive before, and they still have some holes on the offensive line, and they still have some holes on defense, but they look like they're going to be maybe a more promising team coming into 2020, and Todd Gurley will be a part of that. I'm happy that he's back home. I'm sure you are as well. Let me know what you think of the Todd Gurley move back in Atlanta with the Falcons. All right, so back in the chat, let's go see what everybody's saying. One Pride says, what does he say? He said Okuda and Simmons. I read those. Bengals. He's talking about the Bengals. Now the chat's messing up. Ronald says, Lions signed Tony McRae. What's his MO? Honestly, Rollin, I've never heard of him before. I looked him up, and I think he's played he's like a special teamer. He's barely played defense in his career. So I don't really know much about him, if I'm being honest. He's one of the last guys on the roster. I think he's basically, if I had to guess, he's a camp body. See if he can perform in camp. And if he does, he'll make the team. If not, he might be cut. That's the type of player right there. Sure, if he turns into be something, then he turns to be something. But yeah, I've never really heard of him, so I can't really say much. Busboy's in the chat. Coach says fantasy impact for Gurley. Ooh, that's a tough question because fantasy impact for Gurley, I think he's probably going to have, I would like to lean towards he's going to be the starter, and I would like to lean towards that he's going to get nearly as the same amount of carries that he did with the Rams. When comparing the offensive lines, definitely he's in a worse offensive system. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Sean McVay compared to Atlanta's offense, I will say that from a running perspective, it's a downgrade. And the offensive line, I might say, is a little better, even though Atlanta does have their offensive line issues. I feel like the Rams' offensive line has completely let down Todd Gurley, especially last season where they were really bad, especially on the interior of their offensive line. But it's hard to know because it's hard to know how he's going to be and if he's going to be healthy. I think he's one of those guys that has a high upside, but he also has a very low floor. He's not going to be a first-round pick. He's not going to be a second-round pick. He'll probably be a guy that's in the third, fourth round in your fantasy drafts, in my opinion. Like I said, he's going to be a starter. He does catch the football well, so he's going to have receptions out of the backfield and all that. Also considering that Atlanta, they traded Mohamed Sanu, so they don't really have that third receiver, and they let go of Austin Hooper, but they did trade for Hayden Hurst. So they're going to have less production from the tight end, less production from a receiver. So I would expect them to pass the ball a little bit more to their running back, Todd Gurley, but I don't think that he's going to be an elite option. And I actually, at this point, until I hear about how healthy he is going into the season, I'm not going to say I'll probably be targeting him in fantasy drafts. So that's the fantasy impact of Todd Gurley. In terms of other players, I don't think he really affects Julio or Calvin Ridley. Those guys are going to succeed. I don't really see the only guy that he maybe affects is the running back, whoever was going to replace Freeman, but we knew they were going to bring somebody in regardless. So Todd Gurley is going to be a mid-round pick in fantasy this year. What else? Watson to the Pats. Watson to the Pats. What are you talking about, Watson to the Pats? Deshaun Watson? Bodo says with Ben back, he might use the tight end more, but he does tend to forget and just concentrate on wide receivers in Washington. Well, we'll see. I think he loved Heath Miller in the past, and I don't think he's had a tight end as talented as Ebron, so we'll have to see. No, the only guy I've done so far, busboy, is Gurley. We'll get to Ebron next. Andrew says, I would rather Clowney go back to Seattle than go to the Titans. Well, they did let go of Casey, or trade Casey, I should say, so they have the cap space if they want to make a move there. Ozzy says, Manny Sanders to Tampa? Maybe. We'll see. Mike Sullivan says, Vikings should trade for Trent Williams. I think people are also kind of underrating the receivers on Tampa outside of just Godwin and Evans. They have a couple of guys in there. I think it's Scott Miller is his name, and is it Watson? Who is it? The two white guys, but they're pretty good. I think it's Justin Watson, if I'm not mistaken, that's his name. But they performed pretty well last year when they were given the opportunity because they had all those injuries at the end of the year. They had Evans went down and Godwin went down, and then Perryman succeeded. I wouldn't actually be shocked if it's Justin Watson and Scott Miller. Those two guys actually are not bad, and I think they'll be given an opportunity to shine and potentially be the slot receiver, but I don't know. We'll have to see if they bring in another receiver. Like there's the floating rumors of Antonio Brown. There's even the rumors of Edelman. But we'll have to see if they draft someone or if they bring in another guy. I know they signed this Bryant Mitchell, who's played like one game in the NFL before, so that's nothing big. And we'll get into the signing. Oh, look at this. Our lads actually upgraded their depth chart, so that's going to help me throughout these videos because I would have to check like who's on every team with these constant moves, but that's helpful. So let's get into the next signing. Next signing, we'll do Eric Ebron. It's the Steelers are signing Eric Ebron to a 2-year deal worth $12 million. All right. Let's do that. Let's pull up his stats. Eric Ebron. And if you are looking for a depth chart site, the best one is Our Lads for sure. Okay. All right. The Pittsburgh Steelers have brought in a tight end, another option in the passing game for Big Ben Roethlisberger, Eric Ebron of the Indianapolis Colts, one of the most athletic and gifted tight ends in the receiving game in the entire NFL and on the open market. Eric Ebron will make an excellent red zone option for Ben Roethlisberger. Ebron is just a couple seasons away from lighting the NFL on fire with 13 touchdowns last year with Andrew Luck. It's been said that Luck many times was compared to Big Ben, so I feel like that might have something to do with the deal, if anything, but 66 receptions that season, 750 yards. That was his best season in the NFL. He's also had seasons of 61 receptions for 711 yards in Detroit, 53 catches for 574 yards, and 4 touchdowns in his last season in Detroit. And last year in 2019, playing 11 games, he had 375 yards on 31 catches and 3 touchdowns. Ebron has been really inconsistent early in his career where he had some drop issues, but he did kind of find a place in Indianapolis with their 2 tight end sets, was a Pro Bowler in 2018 with Andrew Luck, and now he's going to go somewhere with Pittsburgh with Big Ben and a really elite quarterback. The hope is that Ben can be that elite quarterback again. And one way of making him that elite quarterback after the injury is giving him a nice, big tight end option, both in the red zone and deep down the seam to target. And that's something that I feel like the Steelers offense has not had for a very long time. I mean, they had Heath Miller for years, but Heath Miller was basically like the poor man's Jason Witten in a way, like a safety blanket, decent route runner, could find the little holes in the zone and sit down, but he wasn't really super athletic. I think Eric Ebron's a different type of athlete that the Steelers have not had at this position before. He's really good in man-to-man coverage because of his size, and his speed ability is really difficult to match up with. Whether that's a linebacker, probably too slow to cover him. Whether that's a safety, probably too small. So it does really take a lot to cover this guy in man-to-man coverage consistently. And when he's on, he's really on. But then again, when Ebron is off, he's also really off. So you're getting a guy that could be great and a guy that could be kind of pretty bad. So you're going to have games where he scores multiple touchdowns and has 100 yards, but you're also going to have games where maybe he doesn't show up. And that's kind of the case with Eric Ebron, who's not necessarily in the elite category of tight ends, but from a receiving perspective, I would definitely put him somewhere in the top 10. Now, as an all-around tight end, he's not really that guy that's going to be a straight-up blocker. He's more of a receiving type. He's more of the guy that lines up a little bit in the slot. He will line up in traditional spots in line as a tight end, but he doesn't really block a ton. He's not great at it. He's not a George Kittle. He's not a Gronk. He's not the all-around type. He's more the receiving type. And I think that's exactly what they want, though. And really the interesting question here for the Steelers is, what do they end up doing with Vance McDonald? Do they end up releasing him? Do they trade him? Do they keep him? Do they use two tight end sets? Because Eric Ebron is used to being in a lot of two tight end sets with Jack Doyle in Indianapolis. They could work that into their offense, and maybe that does help Big Ben. Maybe have more play action. That helps the run game. Because the run game for the Steelers last year wasn't as good as it should have been or was expected to be, I do expect this to add to maybe a little bit of their formation variation in terms of, okay, now we can have more tight ends on the field. We upgraded from Nick Vannett, for example, and we could put more tight ends, two tight end sets. We could put, three tight end sets, and even just go bigger, go smaller. Ebron can line up as a slot receiver if you want him to, or he can line up wide, especially in the red zone where you can just throw him fades, which they don't really have that type of guy. I mean, Juju isn't really that type of guy. I guess they want Washington to sort of be that type of guy, but it hasn't really panned out yet. So I think this is just adding a big target, a effective passing game target for Big Ben Roethlisberger, and another complementary option to their offense. So their offense is pretty much good. If they do go after a receiver, it will likely be in the draft. But you have Juju Smith-Schuster, you have Johnson, who I really liked last season as a rookie. He really showed like his route running ability, his ability to separate in coverage, and he could be a really good receiver going down these next few seasons. I could see him developing into a really good one. James Washington is that number 3 who lines up mostly on the outside. Ryan Switzer you have as well as kind of like a slot punt returner type role. And after that, there's nobody really there. And like I said, McDonald, Ebron, those guys will work into the mix. If they do keep McDonald, which I expect them to keep him, they'll make their way into the offense as well. So you have I would say 5 or 6, at least decent options for Ben Roethlisberger in this offense, and they fix their issue along the offensive line with Wisniewski at left guard. So it looks like offensively, unless they somehow get a running back, which it doesn't look like they will do because they signed Ebron instead of going after Melvin Gordon, it looks like their offense is set going into next season unless they do hit it in the draft. So Eric Ebron, a playmaker at tight end. I think a lot of people were probably in his market to grab him, and I didn't really expect the Steelers to be one of the teams interested in Eric Ebron, but it ends up that's actually a pretty good spot for him, and he'll help a comeback for Ben Roethlisberger in 2020. So Eric Ebron to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Back to the chat. Flores says Kittle is better. I don't know what he's talking about. Buck says, I'm meh on Ebron. Guy is entitled and has drop issues. I haven't really seen him be entitled. Maybe that was early in his career when he was a first-round pick coming from Detroit. I know that a lot of Lions fans don't like him, but Flores says Vance is old, though. Honestly, I think James Conner is a little overrated. He was off this season. I think he is a little overrated, too. Rich G says, what's your thoughts on the new 17-game season with 7 teams from each conference going to the playoffs? I'm not so sure I love it. I mean, I think it's a bad deal like that they signed for the CBA for the 17 games. I don't think they got enough compensation for that. Obviously, it's going to be great for me running a YouTube channel based on the NFL. I get one more game. That's awesome for me. As a fan, it's pretty cool. But for the players, I think it kind of sucks. In terms of the playoffs, you add another game in the playoffs. I think that's pretty cool, but I don't really like the fact that the number 1 seed, which has already been heavily favored in the past 10 kind of playoff runs. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of number 1 seeds get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl ultimately, or bye teams, I should say. I feel like giving only one team a bye just makes them that much more of a favorite and it that much harder to beat that number 1 seed. So I'm not sure I like it from that perspective, but in the perspective as a fan seeing more games, I do like it. Did Sanders go to the Bucks? I don't see any alerts. Let me see. I don't know if you're just saying that. I don't see it. Nope. I heard he might go to the Cowboys. I did hear that. I heard the Cowboys were looking at him. Arthur says, Mitch, how about a best free agents left and their fits recap? I'll throw you a bone. Devontae Freeman to the Lions. I've heard that one's pretty common. Yes, I usually do that video, Arthur, so I'll definitely do that at some point. I don't know if it's going to be like this weekend or into next week, but I'll definitely do that. H. Huss says, out of topic, but do you watch baseball too? No, I don't. I watch hockey, I watch basketball, but baseball is not a sport I really watch. Unless I'm live there or I'll follow it a little bit if I hear some news. I kind of know the top players, but I don't really know any of the teams are staying. It's just not one of my favorite sports. I never really grew up on it at all. But yeah, I watch basically every other major sport except for baseball. So yeah, not a baseball guy, unfortunately. Sharp says, do you think Seattle will get Clowney? Yes, definitely. Turtle says, Mitch, would you be interested in doing a live mock draft stream? I think that would be fun. Yes, down the road when we get closer to the draft, I will do it. And I potentially will even do one. I don't want to commit to it yet, but I do want to do something for the draft for every team like I did free agency. But we'll have to see. Joseph says, I really like the Lions have what they've done in free agency. Dumping Slay was probably my favorite. Quinn got a 3rd round and a 5th round. For a corner who thinks his shit don't stink, well, he is good. Patricia told him it does. Okay. We'll see how it works out for you. Hopefully Trufant can fill those shoes, or Okuda if they draft him. Browns fan says, Ebron or Hooper? I think, Hooper's been more productive, definitely. I think they both have their pros and their cons. I think Hooper is a more well-rounded tight end. I think Hooper is a smarter player. I think he's a better route runner. I think he understands coverages and defenses better, and he's had better relationships with his quarterback. Ebron is more athletic. He can run faster. He can separate better. He's bigger. It's tough. I think Hooper is all around a better player, but I think Ebron has the upside that Hooper doesn't because of his physical attributes. Airflow says, where will Everson Griffin go? So a Browns fan, I think, brought him up before, so potentially the Browns. If I really had to say, I think the Bills could be an option. I know they've already looked into the edge position. I wonder if the Cowboys have enough money. I don't think they do, but that would be a pretty awesome fit in Dallas. I think the Raiders should take a look at him, but I know they've already signed Carl Nassib, so they might be out there. Who else? So the Bucks don't really need. The Saints, if I don't think could afford him, but they definitely could use somebody like that. The Titans could afford him, but I don't know if he fits the defense. The Colts would be interesting, but they already have Justin Houston as an edge guy who's a little older, and I don't know if they would want to take on two of those type of guys, but he would definitely be a massive upgrade considering they have Phillip Rivers. To have Griffin, Houston, and then in the middle, Buckner, that would be a massive upgrade to their defensive line, and it fits their scheme well. Bengals, I don't think so. I don't think they're really in that market. Bills, no. Patriots, no, I don't think so. Dolphins, no. They've signed like 100 edge guys already. Jets, maybe, but I don't know if he really fits their type of defense either, but they really need an edge player. The Eagles, I could see that for sure because they're always interested in defensive linemen. The Bears, no, they signed Quinn. Lions could maybe, but I don't know if he's like a perfect fit. And looking at the NFC West, if he took a lower contract, I think the 49ers would be interested. I think Seattle will be interested. I think that's probably it. I mean, those teams that I brought up all kind of make sense from both a money and a scheme perspective. So there's Everson Griffin. Let's go to the next signing, which let's go with Ha Clinton-Dix. Best name in the NFL. To the Dallas Cowboys. So, Clinton-Dix. Surprised again. He only got a 1 year? I think he only got a 1 year contract. Yeah, 1 year, $4 million. Again, very inexpensive. He's been taking these 1 year contracts like 3 years in a row. He's played on like 3 different teams 3 years in a row, I think. Cowboys. Let's see if our lads has it updated. They do. So I'll be able to take a look at their full defense. What was he ranked this year? I know he had a good season. Let me see. Do you think we're going to trade Odell? It doesn't look like it. We're going to trade, yeah. So I'm assuming you're a Browns fan, Adam. It doesn't look like they're going to unless it happens at the draft. And if it does happen, I would expect it to be a contender. I wouldn't be shocked if the team's name starts with an S and ends with an N Francisco. But we'll see. PFF grades, safeties, Clinton-Dix. Come on. Yeah, another good grade. Played over 1,000 snaps this year. Okay, let's get into this. All right. Ha Clinton-Dix has signed with the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys have finally upgraded their safety position. I feel like has been a weakness for their defense for like a long time. I mean, back into the Romo days, this was a weakness of their defense. Clinton-Dix might be the best safety they have signed and had on their roster for a very long time. And he's had success in a lot of different teams, systems, a lot of different teams in general. You're talking about Green Bay earlier in his career when he was a Pro Bowler. Washington, he played for them late in 2018, 9 games there. He played in Chicago last season where he played very well. He was ranked 19th by PFF last season as their 19th best safety in the league. He had pretty even grades in terms of both coverage and run defense. He played over 1,000 snaps last season, which is for safeties pretty common for starters. He's played both free safety and strong safety. Our lads has him listed as just a safety on the depth chart of the Cowboys. So they have Xavier Woods there, who is not the wrestler, is not the wrestler, but the football player. So he's a strong safety. I think more than a free safety. I think Woods has played a little bit of both. So that's kind of why like the depth chart says safety for both. But I think Clinton-Dix is better at free safety. And the reason why is I think he's better as a playmaker. I think at times in his career, he's shown those playmaking skills, those abilities to play deep in zone coverage and read the eyes of quarterback and make plays. Last year, he had 2 interceptions. He had 5 passes defense. He had 78 tackles, which was pretty good, higher than last season because he played more in the box. His career high is 100 tackles with Green Bay in 2015. His career high in interceptions is 5 when he was a Pro Bowler in 2016. And he has played in the playoffs before with Green Bay. He's played in the playoffs as well in 2014, 2015, and 2016. You might remember that he had 2 interceptions on Russell Wilson in that NFC Championship game where John Bostic, I believe it was, cost them the game on the onside kick. He had 2 interceptions in that game. He also had an interception in 2015 in the playoffs as well. Advanced stats last season, he had a 59.1% completion allowed, which is good. Anything under like 65 I would consider as good. 26 completions on 44 targets, 26 allowed. Air yards allowed, only 189. He only allowed 1 touchdown in coverage, and he's not like a blitzer. He doesn't rarely blitz. I think he has like this is what they have accounted for him, Pro Football Reference, 16 blitzes in 2018 and only 14 last year. So I don't expect the Cowboys to be sending him on like any edge blitzes or corner blitzes or strong safety blitzes or anything like that. He's not that type of guy, but he's, like I said, he's more of the coverage guy. I would say more of a zone guy than a man guy. He's more of a deep free safety, but he has played strong safety. Like for Chicago, he played strong safety because they have Eddie Jackson. So I think it just depends on what team he's played on and what system and where they feel like he fits best. But I think that's great because he's shown versatility, and wherever Dallas kind of want to utilize him there, I think he's a good player. And he's consistently graded well. He's consistently made plays. The thing that he hasn't consistently been able to do is stay on the field as much as you may have liked. I mean, he played 16 games last year, which is positive, and he played 16 games in 2018. So recently, it hasn't really been an issue. Actually, I'm totally wrong on that. He's played every game. Wow, I thought he was hurt last year. See, but he was banged up last year. He was banged up, but not out for any game. So I guess that's good. It's a tough guy, but not necessarily 2 interceptions in the playoffs in 2014, 1 interception in the playoffs in 2015. Trying to look at the snap counts. Snap counts, 99% in 2019 and nearly 88 in 2018. In Green Bay, he was playing 100% of the snaps, 2015 and 2016, where he had over 1,000 snaps 3 seasons in a row, and he got back into that territory last year. So I don't really have anything to say bad about him. Like, whenever I watch him, I always see him making plays, and when he's not making plays, it's because his name's not being called, because he's not giving up big plays on his end. Other than that, I mean, I think Dallas, like I said at the beginning, best safety they've had in seasons and best zone safety they've had in seasons. He's probably not going to be like their tight end guy that he just mans up on tight ends. That's probably going to be like Woods. But I do expect him to play a role in giving up less big plays down the field. Now that you have lost Byron Jones, a little concern is there at corner. So I think Clinton-Dix, bringing him in at safety, will help them a little bit get over the loss of Byron Jones. So there you go. Clinton-Dix, I think one of the more underrated players in free agency at the safety position. He finds another new home for the 3rd season in a row after starting his career in Green Bay for 4 straight years. Washington, Chicago, and now Dallas. And another 1-year prove-it deal. It's kind of fascinating that this guy has not gotten a long-term deal, but I think he's definitely going to be worth $4 million, and I think the Cowboys found them a really good piece on their secondary for 2020. So Clinton-Dix to the Cowboys. What can the Bears do at number 2 corner in free agency? That's a good question because I don't know who is still available. And I don't have my sheet that I used to have. I don't know. I don't know who's still available. If you maybe gave me a few names, I'd be able to tell you. But Amukamara is gone, so they're not going to bring him back. Winston to Pittsburgh. I think Winston to Pittsburgh makes far more sense than Newton. And that's probably where I would want him to go. If I was him, I would call Pittsburgh and go there. Because I think he fits that offense really well, and he has a lot of comparable traits to Big Ben. So he could sit behind Big Ben and learn from him for 1 year, and then maybe be the starter the next year if he's proven to be a good soldier that year and they like what they see in practice. Did you cover the possibility of the Bears getting Brandon Cooks? No, I don't really know. I think he's just on the market, so whoever wants to pay for him. But I will say this. I don't think he's going to go there because even though they need a receiver it doesn't make sense because they don't have barely any draft picks and they don't have a lot of money. So I don't really think I don't think it will work because I don't think they're going to want to pay Allen Robinson what they pay Allen Robinson and then also pay Brandon Cooks on top of that. It just... To me, it doesn't really make sense for them. I think he makes sense for other teams, but I don't think he makes sense for the Bears. Everson Griffin or Calais Campbell? I think Calais Campbell is better, but Griffin's good. They're different players. Griffin's he's smaller. He's not as big as Campbell. He's more of like a finesse edge rusher. Calais Campbell is more of like a big bulldozing defensive lineman, but with pass rush ability. Bodo says the Bears are going to draft a corner according to the rumors and fellow Bears fans, which I'm not a Bear fan. I'm just saying the other Bears fans have been saying that. Okay. I think if the Bears are going to find a receiver, it's probably going to be in the draft, but we'll have to see. How do I feel about Tom Brady? I've talked about that already. What do I think about Judy or Lamb? Which one is better? I hope my 49ers pick one. I've been leaning towards Judy, but I mean, they're both good. And the thing that I'm kind of like surprised about is everybody's talking about how great of a draft this is. Again, I haven't gone like fully in depth on the draft, but if it's a great receiver draft, does that truly mean it's a great draft? Like, I mean, offensive line, it's good at tackle. I'll say that. Defensively, it's not the greatest draft. There's some standout players, but I feel like defensively, it's not as good as receiver or tackle, which is the main spots. And in terms of quarterbacks, I don't think it's as good as the last couple of years. I mean, other people really like these quarterbacks, but I mean, obviously you have the top 2 or 3 that are always going to be there every year, but I don't know if this draft is truly as good. Tight ends, kind of mediocre. Like edge rusher falls off after like 2-3 guys. Linebacker, I haven't heard like anybody bring up linebacker in this draft, so I think it's really good in certain aspects, but it's not like the greatest draft I've ever heard. For sure. Buzzboy says Sue to Pittsburgh. He would replace Hargrave. They did make a trade today that I think will help replace Hargrave. We'll get into that in a sec. Ultra's in the chat. Yo, what's up? David says, Mitch, what do you think the Bears will do in the draft? These Bears questions. Let me look at their picks. I don't really know, honestly, but I do think that they're going to attack the offensive line because they need to. Who knows what a team's truly going to do? I mean, they could do whatever the heck they want to do. But I think offensive line is the need that they need the most. So 2020, they have 1 second. Okay, I'm trying to figure this out. Do they have 2? This website's very confusing. First round pick they don't have. I know that because it's Khalil Mack. Do they have 2 seconds? 2 seconds. Third round pick. They don't have a third. They don't have a fourth. So they have 2 seconds. They have a compensation fourth. They have a fifth, a sixth, a seventh. So they don't have a lot of picks. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 picks, which I guess is like the bare minimum unless you trade all your picks. But they don't have a first, so can't say that they'll get like a top tackle. So definitely second round. I think they're going to look at receiver because I think that's where a lot of receivers are going to be, is in the second round. And I think probably if one of those tackles slides up, unless they want to trade both of their seconds to the first round, if they can somehow get in the first round. But that might even be, they might even have to trade more than just 2 seconds. So we'll see, but I think they have to address the offensive line, specifically offensive tackle, maybe one of the guard spots. And then defensively, I still think they need to upgrade corner and safety. That's pretty much it. I mean, their D-line is really good, and their edge position now with Robert Quinn is good. Their linebacker position is solid. It's safety, it's corner, it's tackle, it's guard, and it's receiver. And maybe tight end, but I don't think there's a lot of tight ends that will go super highly. So, and I don't think that's really a huge need for them in terms of their scheme. Their scheme doesn't really ask for them to have a huge or a great tight end. So Clinton-Dix is done. Ebron I covered. Gurley I covered. Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon, Andrew Sendejo, and Danny Vitale. Is that how you say his name? Vitale? From the Packers backup fullback or whatever he was. Entered the NFL, 6th-round pick of the Buccaneers in 2016. Played 44 games. How many snaps did that guy play last year? Patriot fandom taking over right now. Let's see. Yeah, he played 170 snaps, which is actually not bad for a fullback. That's crazy. Some fullbacks, teams don't even use it. Stupid. Kyle Juszczyk, 500 snaps. Okay. Who should I cover next? No. I'm not going to go over it again. You can wait for the video to come out. Where did Gurley go? He went to Atlanta. What are you asking? Yes or no what? Oh, should I call in? Sure, if you want. Yeah, Gronk is going to WWE. He's hosting WrestleMania. JJ, what? I'm not rude. I'm reading all your questions today. Yeah, you could call in. What do you want to talk about? I gotta get on the app first. Okay. Let's see. Yup. Let me turn you up. Okay. There you go. Ultra, the first time live on the Bottom Line View. What do you gotta say?
What's up? I'm stoked about Todd Gurley, man.
Oh yeah, what do you think he's gonna bring to Atlanta's offense?
You know, I think our O-line's developing. If Lindstrom and McGarry can continue to develop as players, I think we can be good, as long as his knees hold up.
Are there any other Falcon fans on this channel?
Yeah, Atlanta Fan 21 is like the only other one.
Damn, they're getting underrepresented. You got to get your friends out here in the chat.
I'm trying, bro. Most underrated channel on YouTube.
Thank you. What? Oh, Turtle saying Ultra in the chat.
By the way, since Bill O'Brien is into trading free players, we'll take JJ Watt off your hands.
That's what I said. I think JJ Watt should go to Pittsburgh because all his brothers are there.
Yeah, but I mean, seeing him in red and black wouldn't hurt either.
I don't know. Can they afford it?
I don't know. It seems like we got a bank in Switzerland or something because we're affording players we shouldn't be able to.
So what do you think Gurley's an upgrade over Freeman?
I don't think Free was bad necessarily. I think the O-line and the scheme somewhat wore out on him. But ultimately, yeah, I think he's definitely an upgrade over Freeman.
Anything else to say to the bottom line viewers out there?
Yeah, just continue sticking with this channel. It's great. And by the way, Matt Ryan is a top 10 quarterback. I don't want to hear it from
Here
you guys
we go.
saying, oh, he's overrated. No. But anyway, all right.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, we will. All right.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Ultra. Bodo, call on the Discord. I'll put you on. Get on there. If anyone wants to call in, they got to be in the Discord chat. Or else they can't call in. $28.3. $38.3. Because I think everybody that actually calls in is young. Turtle. Thank you for calling in, Ultra. We'll get back to these breakdowns, and then I'll see if Bodo can get on for a couple seconds so he can rant about Tomlin and the like, and then we'll get into... let's do the trade first. Wormley. Let's do that. A big boy for the Steelers. All right. The Pittsburgh Steelers, coming into free agency, they knew they were going to have to choose between Hargrave and Bud Dupree. One of them was going to leave. One of them was going to go elsewhere. It ended up being Hargrave. He left to Philadelphia, so they had a big spot on their depth chart to fill. They go out and they make one of the oddest trades that I've ever seen. They trade for Chris Wormley, defensive lineman, and this is why it's weird, of the Baltimore Ravens. I didn't think this was going to happen ever in my lifetime, where the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is considered arguably the most fierce rivalry in the NFL, they made a trade. It was a trade for Chris Wormley, who is a interior defensive lineman, a 5th-round pick in 2021 to the Ravens for Chris Wormley, and a 7th-round pick in 2021. So this is a next-year trade in the draft. It's an intra-division trade, which is like, doesn't rarely happen, specifically with two teams that hate each other as much as the Steelers and the Ravens hate each other. So maybe the Ravens just feel like Chris Wormley is not very good and they want to give him to their rival. No, I'm just kidding. But for real, Chris Wormley was a starter for the Ravens last year in the interior of their defensive line. And what has happened with the Ravens, of course, is that they've brought in Michael Brockers and they brought in Calais Campbell. Of course, they did let go of Michael Pierce, but Those are 3 starters in their interior of their defensive line with Brockers, Brandon Williams at nose tackle, and then you also have Calais Campbell. So Wormley was no longer going to be a starter, which means that trading him actually did make a lot of sense. And a team that does play a defense, at least a base defense, that is very similar to the Ravens is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the talent and the value that these teams like on defense makes sense that the Steelers would be interested in some of the Ravens players. So Chris Wormley is one of those guys. Steelers defensively now add Wormley to the bunch. He is expected to play nose tackle for the Steelers, but we'll have to see if he ends up playing end the way he did with the Ravens. Now, it's a little different because nose tackles are usually known to be a little bit bigger, a little bit more of the run stuffer. He's played a little bit more of the 3-4 end, so to speak. Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, those 2 guys are 2 of the best in the game still, and they're still there at the end. But when they shift to a 4-down lineman set, because they still have Bud Dupree, they still have TJ Watt, they'll probably take Wormley off the field. So Wormley's probably just going to be in there for the rundowns, the early downs, the downs where they feel like they need that big body in there. So it makes sense that he replaces Hargrave. But Hargrave, the value of him was the fact that he was not only great as a run stuffer, but he was also great as a pass rusher. Taking a look at how Wormley was graded last year, he was graded as the 63rd best interior defensive lineman from PFF. So you do the math, that's like a number 2 on a team. 69.9 run defense grade and a 53 pass rush grade. So had a pretty lackluster pass rush grade, but from run perspective, not terrible. He played 482 snaps, so not a ton. And basically was a one-dimensional player for the Ravens last year. He's 6'5", 300 pounds. Like I said, a big-bodied, big dude. He's played 3 years in the NFL so far. He's 26 going on 27. He only has 2.5 career sacks. He did up his quarterback hit total to 6 this year, and he did start 7 games for the Ravens. In terms of his snap count percentage, his snaps have gone up every year pretty considerably. 11% in 2017, 39% in 2018, his second season with the Ravens, and his third season with the Ravens, 46%, 448 snaps. Again, this is a guy that is a run stuffer. He's going to play in those situations where they need him to come in to stop the short yardage or on first and second down when teams are in power running sets. Other than that, they'll get him off the field and they'll have Bud Dupree come in with TJ Watt on the edge, and they'll have Tuitt and Hayward on the interior for their 4-man rush to get at the quarterback. So Wormley is a nice player, I feel like, that can at least fulfill part of Hargrave, what he offered. But when you lose a good player like Hargrave, you need to find multiple players to fill that role. So when looking at the Steelers, they have Wormley, Alualu, McClures, and Buggs, all players that can fill that role collectively. It's not just going to be one guy, but multiple guys that end up filling this spot. But I do feel like for the value, not terrible. I mean, I think it makes sense why they made the deal. A 5th rounder basically to move up from the 5th and move down to the 7th in 2021, a year from now. So I feel like the value is there for the Steelers to get a guy right now and really a team that's looking to win right now anyways, with Big Ben Roethlisberger looking at the end of his career. This trade makes a lot of sense for the Steelers. From the Ravens' perspective, it makes some sense because they've spent so much money on the defensive line that this guy kind of became disposable. So that's my thoughts on Chris Wormley being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers from, of all teams, the Baltimore Ravens. Damn, Bodo's too busy. He can't call. What's my favorite under-the-radar signing so far? I loved Adrian Phillips to the Patriots. I liked Carl Nassib to the Raiders. There were some I liked. I liked some of the Browns. I really liked the Browns trade for the fullback Janovich. What else? I liked... Because you kind of forget the under-the-radar ones. Buffalo, I liked Quentin Jefferson. That was a great one. I liked Mario Addison, if that's considered under the radar. Dolphins made some that I liked. I liked Ogba and Grugier Hill to the Dolphins. Those are some that I liked. Oh, I like Devondre Campbell to the Cardinals as well. So those are some that I liked right there. How would you guys feel if I ended up doing some streaming on the channel of me playing like Madden or something? I was thinking of actually doing like a throwback series on one of like the throwback Maddens or throwback NFL games or something like that. Maybe I'll do 2K5. We'll do that. Back in the corner right there. Just to do something for fun. I know a lot of you are stuck at home, so something to do. What would you grade the Browns free agency so far? I really liked what they've done. Andrew Sendejo is another part of that, which I want to get to quickly here. But let's just take a look at their team. I think the only thing they really haven't addressed yet is left tackle. And maybe depth on the defensive line. They signed an interior lineman, though, didn't they? I thought they did. It doesn't show up here, but I thought they did. They need to get a linebacker as well. But still the draft coming. But I like some of the smaller moves they've made. I like the Carl Joseph move. I liked Hooper and Conklin, obviously. I thought Hooper may be a little bit expensive, but Conklin was an awesome deal. And I loved the Janovich one. So I would probably give them at least a B, if not a B+. I think that they still have a few holes, like I said, but from what they've done so far, I like it. Billings, that's who they signed. Yeah, he didn't show up on this depth chart for some reason. That was a good signing as well. Yeah, I'll give him a B+. Okay. Next up, Melvin Gordon, Andrew Sendejo. I don't think I'm going to cover this Antonio Hamilton one because nobody knows who he is. Joe Haeg. Yeah, let's go with Sendejo. We're talking about the Browns. So let's do that. He actually had a kind of a bounce back later half of the season last year because he went back to Minnesota after going to the Eagles. So let's talk about that. The Cleveland Browns have brought in a veteran safety, Andrew Sendejo of the Minnesota Vikings. And when I did my free agency plan for the Cleveland Browns coming into this free agency, I asked for them to do one thing. And that one thing was to sign veteran, experienced, good locker room players to help the culture of this franchise. And I think Andrew Sendejo exactly fits that description. Sendejo is now into his 30s. He's 33 this season, but he is a player that can play a role still on defense as he showed for Minnesota last year. But he is a great leader, a smart player, and is going to keep that defense in check on and off the field. I think he's also going to help what they want really in terms of how the team's going to operate defensively on a day-to-day. in the meetings, in the locker room, on the practice field. Sendejo is going to be that guy to help out the defensive coordinator, head coach, and kind of be that leader, but a player, right? That's what they're looking for. I think Sendejo is exactly what they were missing in that regard, because when you look at the rest of their defense, they don't really have any veterans like that in that mold. I mean, they don't have a lot of older guys, just period. I mean, their stars are Myles Garrett, their Denzel Ward defensively. They don't have older players, especially after not re-signing Schobert and cutting Christian Kirksey. They don't have those veterans with the leadership in their locker room. So Sendejo does fit that, and he can kind of help out like Greedy Williams in practice and help him with his game as well, being a young corner in this league. Offensively, there's a lot of egos on this team, and there's a little bit more leadership from the offensive perspective, but still a very young team. Sometimes you need to balance that out with some veterans who are experienced, and I do think that it helps that really when you look at the coaching staff, Kevin Stefanski, head coach, as well as defensive coordinator Joe Woods, are both from Minnesota. So it makes a lot of sense that you would bring in Andrew Sendejo, because you know this guy, you know what he brings to the table, both on and off the field. Now, for Sendejo last season, he did have this weird experience of playing on the Eagles for just a little bit. He played 9 games with the Eagles, and he was okay, but nothing spectacular. He then goes back to Minnesota, where he spent basically his entire career, except his rookie season, where he spent it with Dallas for 2 games. I think he was an undrafted player, that's why. But then goes to Minnesota, plays many seasons there, and kind of is a staple of their defense, staple of their secondary, playing alongside Harrison Smith for many of those seasons. Goes to Philadelphia, doesn't really fit the scheme well. I don't think he really was utilized properly. And then in Minnesota, he fills that third safety role perfectly, plays a little bit of a linebacker, plays a little in-box safety, and that's what Sendejo can do. He's a smart guy. He's, like I said, 33, but he looks like he's about 50. I mean, he has all the gray facial hair and all that. He looks like a dad, basically, Sendejo. But he's a good player still. He's very smart, very intelligent, will get the defense in the right play. He's never been a Pro Bowl caliber player, but just a solid starter. And I think what he's going to play the role on the field of is kind of that third or fourth safety in the rotation, and play a little bit maybe linebacker on passing downs and passing sets. And he's used to this scheme, so it's an easy transition. And for the rest of the young players, he can help them along in learning this scheme from a day-to-day, especially if this team, and we're going through a process where teams might be without a lot of their mini camps and off-season workouts. It will help to have those guys that really know systems and really know what the defenses are doing to help the other players, especially with these new coaches in the league that are going to have to get all these guys up to speed on their schemes and their systems on both sides of the ball. So Andrew Sendejo, a veteran safety, goes to the Cleveland Browns, and that's exactly what you're getting, a smart leader on and off the field. Sendejo to the Browns. Is that good? Any news on the Lions? I don't think there was any news today other than like a couple depth ones. Special teams guys. Stuff like that. Schobert go anywhere? Yes, he did. He went to Jacksonville. What's up, a human? Guys, before I get into the rest of the signings and everything happening in the NFL, make sure that you do Gronk Spike the like button. Show your support. Let's go. Also, if you're just joining me for the first time, subscribe to the Bottom Line View. And if you're not already in the chat, let me know your opinion on your team in this free agency. Okay, so we've covered Sendejo. Joe Haeg we have to cover. Melvin Gordon, which I'll save for the main event. And we have Vitale. I don't know, friggin' Italian name. Vitale. I think that's how it's pronounced. And then we have Haeg. So let's do Joe Haeg, and then we'll do Vitale. Okay. Seahawks are being boring this free agency. They're mostly boring. The Sanders went to the... Okay, let's check out a bunch of tweets. Oh, I called it too. I totally called that. I totally called that. You guys remember I called that. Don't lie. 2 years, $16 million. Good deal. I like it. That's good for the Saints, man. Hurts my second favorite team, but 2 years, $16 million. Up to 19. Let's do that one right now. Okay. What were Sanders' stats like last year? He didn't quite hit 1,000 yards. $869 yards. Nice. Okay. I love this move. I love it. They're going for it. Gotta respect it. Okay. The New Orleans Saints have finally signed a number 2 quality wide receiver, veteran Emmanuel Sanders. After being traded from the Broncos, kind of rejuvenated himself with the 49ers on the run to the Super Bowl. He signs a 2-year deal, $16 million, up to $19 million. Pretty awesome, if you ask me. I thought this was a perfect fit. I actually predicted a Sanders signing in New Orleans. I put it in my video for what I would like to see happen in terms of if I was the team, if I was the GM, who would I want them to sign? And I had Emmanuel Sanders for the New Orleans Saints. And a big reason is because I think it takes a humongous amount of pressure off of Michael Thomas. It gives another fantastic route runner for Sean Payton underneath a defense. And Sean Payton is already like the master of anyone of getting receivers wide open no matter what or what their name is. But you add Emmanuel Sanders, who's one of the best still route runners in the game, especially short to intermediate, which is where Drew Brees succeeds. And that is what I love about it. I know a lot of people wanted the Saints to get like a deep threat. Dude, they don't pass the ball down the field, so what's the point? I mean, you have Ted Ginn who can still run his butt off anyways if you really want him back, and you can utilize him as that, or Traquan Smith as that. But you have Michael Thomas, who is a short to intermediate receiver, possession beast, who has the most receptions in NFL history in one season. And then you have Emmanuel Sanders so that Michael Thomas won't have to do that again, hopefully for this season and next season. What I love about it is that Sanders is going to be just a bona fide number 2. Like, he's going to be a great number 2. He's going to perfectly fit this offense. He's going to have instant chemistry with Drew Brees. I mean, he worked with Peyton Manning before. There's going to be that process of working with a great quarterback and their expectation level and understanding all of that. I think he's going to thrive because Sean Payton puts receivers in excellent positions. And I think this gives him another receiver that can play on the outside. He can play in the slot, and he can do a lot of different things. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Sanders even outdid himself this year more so than he did last year. I think he's going to near like the same numbers, 800, 900, maybe even 1,000 yards, just like last season. And now Breeze has Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook. That is a solid 4 players that are targets, that are perfect for this offense, and the best short to intermediate offense in the league in terms of passing the football. With a really good offensive line, they took care of Andrus Peat at left guard, signing him long-term. So now you have that offense set for Drew Brees, and you can focus your draft capital defensively, whether that's on a corner, a safety, or linebacker, defensive end, whatever the heck it is. You can focus that high capital on the draft, and now you have your offense basically set up for Drew Brees, and you give him a veteran guy who's going to quickly understand the offense, come in and click. So you don't have to worry about all that other stuff and working with rookies. Considering this might be Drew Brees' last season, and if it's not, it's next year, you have Sanders for 2 years, and you're going to make one last run with Drew Brees to try and win that Super Bowl. I love this move. I think this has really been a huge position, a number 2, like a legit number 2 receiver. That has been a huge part of what the Saints have missing. I think the other position now going forward that they need to address is number 2 corner. If they can get that addressed, I think you could argue that the Saints might be the best team in the NFC, depending on how Drew Brees plays this next season in 2020, because we never know, because old quarterbacks, that's the way it goes. But Saints are really, really talented. They have a great roster, and now they add even more talent, a veteran in Emmanuel Sanders, who has been so successful throughout his career. I've loved him for a long time, since his Pittsburgh days. 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons in Denver from 2014 to 2016, attending 2 Pro Bowls there. 2019, 869 yards, 66 catches, and 5 touchdowns in the playoffs. He also has won a Super Bowl with the Broncos. He had 71 yards last playoffs. So remember, the 49ers didn't really throw the ball a lot. But he has shown success in the playoffs with 16 catches for 230 in 2015. And that was even a season where Peyton Manning wasn't really tossing the rock around a ton. So, I mean, he's shown playoff success. He's shown regular season success. And he's shown that he's a perfect fit for this offense. So Emmanuel Sanders to the New Orleans Saints. Absolutely love this move because I wanted it to happen. So there you go. Sanders to the Saints. Bucks gotta get some DB, says Rick Badboy. They're actually kind of underrated in that department, but okay, so it's interesting. Sanders was appealing to NFC options. He spoke with the Cowboys, the Packers, but he preferred to wind up with the Saints. There you go. And I don't blame him. I wonder if the Packers and the Cowboys will look elsewhere now. How do you not trust Peyton? Okay, we just have a couple more to go. I don't even know if covering a fullback is worth it. But we'll do 2 more. Joe Haeg. Do you think if Tampa doesn't make any kind of playoff run that a lot of people put Brady down? No, I don't think Brady's success in Tampa will change his legacy. Randy says, do you think the Seahawks could get Yannick? It's possible. They would be one of the teams that look at him. I would suspect. Rams back to the playoffs, Brian. Sorry, I don't see that happening. I think they've only gotten worse, I'm sorry to say. And that division is very hard. Very difficult. Probably the best division in the league. I wonder if Haeg will play right tackle or guard. I suspect he'll play right tackle, but that's what they have him listed at here. Do we have any Colts fans in the chat? Ooh. Interesting. We got two more. What was your guys' favorite move of today? Okay. What was the contract? Yeah, it doesn't have it. Okay, let's just do it. All right. Well, now that Tom Brady is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, your first set of plans has to be, how do you protect Tom Brady? Well, the Tampa Bay Bucs, I already feel like, have a pretty solid interior offensive line. Their problem really is the tackle position. Donovan Smith is going to be their left tackle, so they really had questions at right tackle. Dotson is a free agent, and he doesn't appear to be coming back. So they went out and they signed an underrated name, Joe Haeg of the Indianapolis Colts, who started quite a few games in the NFL, but has mostly made a name for himself as being a very underrated player because he's been a backup for a lot of his career, starting in place. And right now, he was a backup for many would argue is the best offensive line in the league in Indianapolis. So 2016, 2017, he saw most of his action as a starter. He played 14 games in 2016 at 23 years old, 953 snaps. That's 87% of snaps. 2017, he played 15 games, 987 snaps. That's 96% of snaps. In 2018, he started 6 games and played only 8 and played 367, 32%, and then lost his job going into 2019 and remained a backup, 74 snaps. That's it. Now, in those 74 snaps, he was graded fairly well, but you're really taking a look at what he's done as a starter. And for the most part, he's been pretty solid. I think what the Bucs will like from him is that he's pretty young. He's just entering his prime, 26, 27 years old. He's played tackle. He's also played a bit of guard. He's played left guard. He's played right guard. And he's played right tackle. They have him listed on their depth chart as their right tackle right now, so that's where I suspect he will play. But I could also see him playing right guard if the Bucs do decide to draft a tackle because he's played there before. So we'll have to see what they do because left guard, center, great. Jensen, Marpet, they're great there, and Smith is pretty solid at left tackle. If they want to move Haeg into right guard, they possibly could, and then draft a young guy in the first round at right tackle, and then they would be pretty set with a pretty good offensive line for Tom Brady. They already have the weapons surrounding Tom Brady. People wonder whether they're going to bring a running back in, but I think this is a really small move that I think goes a long way in helping Brady. And I would not be surprised if Brady actually had a hand in hand-picking Joe Haeg for his offensive line this season. But I like this move because the Bucs didn't panic. They didn't say, oh, well, we got Tom Brady, so we're going to go out and we're going to trade our first rounder for like a big name or whatever. They've been a little quiet since signing Tom Brady, but they've been strategic, and this is the first strategic move they've made. You would like to see them go out and make a move again on the offensive line, whether that's through the draft or free agency, or then in the secondary, maybe adding some depth, some veteran presence at safety and corner. But this team has a lot of talent on both offense and defense. And now you're really just considering with Brady, with Arians, these two are going to be around for 2 more years. You're trying to build this team and maximize that window for 2 seasons. And you're trying to bring in players that are going to help you do that. And I think this is a small, not expensive move that actually will really help the Bucs in 2020 at a number of positions. So Joe Haeg signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Any news on Carlos Hyde? Nope. Dorian says, do you think that the Patriots would take a chance getting Cam Newton? Or do you think it's too much pressure for Cam Newton? I would love if they did that, but I don't think they will. I think that everybody in the NFL is waiting for Newton to be released because nobody knows his status in terms of a physical. And in order to get a physical, you need to be a free agent. So because of Newton's history as a injured player, teams don't want to trade for him. That's the thing, because they don't know how healthy he is. So until that happens, I don't think he's going to get traded for. I think he's actually going to be signed. And I think it's going to be up to Cam to see what he's going to take. I think the Patriots will be willing to throw him an offer and say, hey, look, you can come to New England and we have Josh McDaniels, one of the best offensive minds in NFL history. We have Bill Belichick, the best coach of all time. You can come here and play here for, let's say, $10 million this year for 1 year. But teams are going to offer him, let's say, 15 to 20 million, 5 to 10 million more than New England will. But New England will say, okay, you can come here and you might be able to go to the playoffs. We have a great defense. We need to add a receiver in the draft, but you've played with worse receivers in your career than even this, and you went to the Super Bowl. So, Cam, if you're healthy, McDaniels is going to make an offense for you that you've never played in, and we're going to be a good team, and we're going to compete. So, we're going to go to the playoffs, right? You know this in New England. So, I think that's interesting that if Cam does hit the open market, do the Patriots pursue him? Because I think if they did and they ended up signing Cam and Cam were a decently healthy player next year, I do think the Patriots would be a playoff team. They would be just like I feel like what Cam was playing with early in his career, a defensive team that wins defensive games, and Cam makes a few plays here and there with his legs and his arm and gets them over the top and wins some games. I think that's the way that they would probably go. Hot Take says New England for Andy Dalton. I'm surprised if they were going to go with Andy Dalton. I'm surprised they haven't already made that happen yet. So I think they want to go with Stidham. And I think they want to go with Stidham, honestly. Like, that's what I actually think will happen is they'll go with Stidham. But from a personal perspective, I would love to see Cam. And I don't think Jameis is going to be an option for them. So don't bring it up. Who went to the Saints? Emmanuel Sanders. Marcus says, what do you think about the Lions? I like the Lions. Randy says, Mitch, do you think the Seahawks can get both Clowney and Yannick? Probably not. Ultra says, I'm like 16 and haven't fully gone through puberty yet, so if my voice sounds higher than Wiz Khalifa, that's why. You sounded like an older, more wise busboy, basically. That's what you sounded like. Let's check. I just got a couple tweets. Bills offered a little more to Melvin Gordon than the Broncos, but Gordon grew up in Wisconsin, so he's not afraid to play in cold weather. He wanted to play for the Broncos organization. He wanted to stick it to the Chargers is what that means. I wonder what the Cowboys and the Packers offered Sanders. Okay, we have one more signing to get through is Melvin Gordon. Are the Packers going to get Robbie Anderson? I don't know. I hope so because I feel like it's a perfect fit. But it doesn't. I don't know. Chiefs need to trade Jones. I think they need to keep him. Limitless says, I heard the Browns are interested in Clowney. Do you think it would be a good idea to pursue him? Yes, but they've already spent big money on Hooper and Conklin. That's going to be another $20 million. And then you're going to have to play Myles Garrett, who's going to be another $20+ million at defensive end. So you're putting a lot of money in one position. So he would be great. He would help their team for sure. But I think in terms of money, I don't think it would work. Hot Take says, no, Mitch. Schefter called that tweet out. That's false. Bills didn't make an offer, he said. Okay, interesting. Turtle says, Ultra, you aren't 16. And Ultra said, yeah. Dorian says, I stay in Dallas, but I'm a New England fan. So my question is to you, do you think the Cowboys defense is going to be worse? Because that shows what? Worse than last year. I don't know what the rest of the thing says. But do I think they're worse than last year? Well, that's a good question. Their safety position's better. But if we're just doing it like this, they've added Clinton-Dix and McCoy, and they've gotten rid of Byron Jones and Robert Quinn and Malik Collins. So putting it that way, I feel like, yeah, their defense is a little worse from that perspective. Like, I don't really see a unit on their defense that's, like, spectacular. I think their linebacker unit is really, really good. They got back Sean Lee. They still have Jalen Smith, and they have Leighton Vander Esch there, which is really good linebackers. But corners are, like, average. Safeties are average. Defensive line is average. Like, I feel like they have a very average defense, just in general. I don't think they'll be a bad defense. And they have a different defensive coordinator, though. So the scheme could change. Like, Mike Nolan's now their defensive coordinator. So it might change. They might get more production out of Mike Nolan's defense. But I do think they need a pass rusher on the edge. And I think they need to look at corner in the draft. Those two positions will be important for them. So we'll see. But right now, as of right now, yes, they're worse. But before the season starts, that could change. Sonny says, speaking of my Bills, if you was Bean, who would you pursue next? Well, that's specific. A specific player? I could give you positions. Looks like they're good on offensive line. Looks like they're sticking with what they have. They might bring in guard. Instead of Feliciano, they might bring in another guard, but I doubt it. So they're good at receiver. I think they need to go after a running back, another running back to help Singletary out. They did sign Jones, but linebacker, I think they're good when they sign A.J. Klein. Norman at corner. They signed two interior guys. I think they're good there. They signed a pass rusher. Honestly, if I were them, man, I would go after Ngakwe, but it doesn't appear like they're going to do that. I can't give you a specific name. If I was to give you a position, their pass rushers are pretty good. But you could always be better there. And yeah, I think running back is the clear one. And maybe even tight end, but I think they're mostly most of their signings are done. Like, they're big signings. The rest will just be depth guys, I think. And we'll see what they do in the draft, because they don't really have one pressing need, in my opinion. Yeah, sure, they could get younger at edge. I think that's the clear spot. But yeah, I don't really see like a pressing need. And you could always get better on the offensive line. So when in doubt, offensive and defensive lines. Oh, Bodo's calling? Okay. This is the first time. Bodo. Okay. Bodo's going to sabotage my show here. I opened the app up. What's up, bus boy? You're back. Where'd you go? Falcons are a 6-10 team, says Turtle. Don't lie to yourself. That's one of the best rivalries between bottom line viewers on the channel. Turtle versus Ultra. Dorian says, what do you think about the Colts getting that defensive tackle from the 49ers? I did make a video about that trade. Do you think they need to upgrade on quarterback? Well, they have Rivers now, so they're good now. They signed Rivers. I don't know what you mean by, do you think they need to upgrade on a quarterback on a second-round pick? I'm intrigued to see whether they trade Brissett or not. Name the top 5 teams right now. Good question. Okay. Chiefs. Ravens. Saints. Niners. My pen dropped. 5th team's hard. AFC wise, Bills are there. Steelers are there with Ben. I don't think the Texans. I don't think the Titans. Yeah, maybe the Titans. Not the Chargers, Broncos, not the Raiders. Seahawks are interesting because they haven't, in free agency, they haven't done anything. If they get Clowney back, then maybe I would put them back there. Not Carolina, not Atlanta, not Ultra. Packers. No. Vikings. This is hard. Vikings haven't really done anything except trade Diggs. Sign Michael Pierce. Eagles are interesting, but they don't have any receivers yet. Eagles defense got a heck of a lot better because they got Hargrave and they got Slay. The 5th team, man. Tampa Bay. Let's say the 5th team right now at this moment. Let's say the Bills. Why not? Let's say the Bills. Bills are the 5th team right now. Who's the 5th man? That's the question. Dallas is probably in the... I don't know where Dallas is, actually. Oh, you called. You got to tell me when you're going to call, man. Oh. Are you still in there? Bodo.
Okay, I can hear you now.
All right, Bodo's on live. What's up?
I don't know what the hell blue hell is going on in this. I guess I'm old and just don't understand technology.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you before.
Oh, yeah, because I wasn't in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm in the chat, so you're all good. What do you got to say to the people?
Let me do my mandatory bitching at the Steelers. It's been 12 years since the Super Bowl. I know everybody else is fine with playoffs. We're not. We're the Pittsburgh Steelers. We deserve better. We want better. Get rid of Tomlin. We should have traded Ben 4 years ago. That being said, let me get on with this. I hate Tom Brady again. I actually never hated him before, but now I hate him because he got rid of the most exciting player in the NFL, Jameis Winston. I am pissed off because Jameis Winston was a train wreck. He was either the best or the worst. And now we don't have that anymore. That's why I don't like
How do you know Jameis will be gone?
He's not going to sit on the bench. He was a starter. He went 30-30. He led the NFL in yards.
I know he did. I think he should be there, Bodo.
Yeah, but they're going to would you want to sit behind Brady?
Oh, no, he's not going to be back in Tampa. I heard he could be in Pittsburgh. What would you think of that?
He's going to sit behind Ben?
Yep.
That's another train wreck. Hoping Ben gets hurt?
Yeah, that's what he would be hoping for, yep.
No, he's probably going to find some team that desperately needs a quarterback, so he'll probably go there. He's probably going to wait until the market settles down, and then he can pick whatever team he wants to go to. Somebody will pay for him.
Yeah, we'll see. He's an interesting one. He's exciting for sure.
Anyway, I have to get back to work.
Before you go, what's the record prediction right now for the Steelers?
Let's see. It's still 16 games until next season, so we probably will not have a losing season. Probably 8-8 again.
8-8. Okay.
Yeah, because the Browns have gotten better. The Ravens have definitely gotten better on defense. The Bengals are a mess. Steelers will screw up some games and lose that they shouldn't lose as usual.
Okay. Thank you, Bodo.
All right, peace out, everybody.
There's the wise words of Bodo, live on the Bottom Line View for the first time. He's got to get back to driving. Dorian says, so do you think Josh Gordon is coming back? I don't know, man. I don't think he should because the last time was on it wasn't marijuana, it was steroids. That's what he was taking. So I don't know how I feel about that, man. I don't think he should be. He's made so many mistakes even when he was given another opportunity. Like, I don't know. And if it continuously was just marijuana, then I would be like, okay, yeah, sure, bring him back because that's not even a thing anymore. But I don't know. We'll see. Like, I love the guy, but he's kind of messed up. I think he needs to get personal help. What team has the best non-dome stadium in the NFL? I really like Gillette. I really like Seattle Stadium. Those are two I've been to and I think are very nice. Lambeau is classic. What else? Who's not a dome? I've always liked Mile High a lot. I don't know why, but I like Mile High. I've never been there, but it just looks cool on TV. And the new 49ers stadium, Levi Stadium, is very nice as well. So those would probably be the top ones. Heinz Field is nice as well. Yeah, there's some good ones out there. I've been to Heinz Field. It's very nice. Seahawks Stadium will leave you deaf. Yep. Okay, let's do the last signing, which is Melvin Gordon. Let's do that. Sorry for my dogs in the background. Okay. What was the contract? All right, 2 years, $16 million. Okay. The Denver Broncos have taken from the enemy. The LA Chargers allowed Melvin Gordon to leave. They allowed him to pick any team to play for in the NFL. And it was between a couple of teams, but ultimately Melvin Gordon chose to go to Denver. John Elway made a nice pitch, and Melvin Gordon will be a Bronco in 2020. He has signed a 2-year deal worth $16 million with $13.5 million guaranteed. The former Chargers star stays in the AFC West, creating a strong 1-2 punch with Phillip Lindsay that I think might be the best running back duo in football. I mean, it's up there. It's awesome. Gordon and Lindsay. I'm a huge Lindsay guy, and Gordon definitely is still one of the 10 best running backs in the game. He's really good all around. I mean, he doesn't really truly have a weakness to his game. He's got good strength and power as a running back. He's a big back. It's kind of underrated in that regard. He's about 6'1", 215. Like, he's tall, but he's also pretty powerful. He has good size. He's got really good open field burst and speed. And the criticism for Melvin Gordon has always been, from a statistical perspective, is his yards per attempt. Everybody looks at his yards per attempt. 2018 was his best season in terms of his yards per attempt, 5.1. He was a Pro Bowler, which is his only Pro Bowl season of his career, playing 12 games, 885 yards, 50 receptions, 490 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's had 3 seasons where he's had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in 2016 through 2018. Sorry, he had 2 Pro Bowl seasons. Also in 2016, he had a Pro Bowl season. So at 23 and 25, Pro Bowler. He is now 27 this season, right in the middle of his prime. He's played 4 years already in the NFL. It seems like it's gone by like in a flash. He's had 10 touchdown seasons on the ground and has 2 seasons with 4 receiving touchdowns, which is the most he's ever had. He's had 58 receptions as the top in his career in 2017 with the Chargers. And like I said, he's been utilized as a receiver. He's been utilized as a runner. He's great on outside zone type of runs, which I think will fit the Broncos well. And I think he's really going to be awesome with a 1-2 punch with him and Lindsay, because we saw last year with him and Eckler, it was a very explosive running back duo, and they were good on the ground together. And that's kind of the same thing that you're going to get with Lindsay and Gordon. I think Gordon, he doesn't mind being in a place where he has to share some snaps or share some catches or share some carries, whatever it may be. I think he's in it to win. I think he's in it to be successful, but I think he also understands the Broncos are a promising young team, and I think he understands what they're trying to do on the offensive line, and offensively, they have a young quarterback, so he's going to get a lot of touches. And last year, he had just an okay year. I mean, he dealt with the whole thing where he came back like after 4 games because he was holding out, and then he came back kind of a little rusty, and it took him a while to get into it, but 612 yards, 8 touchdowns on the ground. He had 42 catches and 296 yards. Of course, the Chargers were not quite the team that they were the year before, where they were a playoff team. And I would really say, like, for all the people that criticize him, think he's overrated and his yards per attempt or whatever, I'll say 2 things. First, his offensive line has never been great. Never been great. 2018, it was maybe the best it's ever been, and it was not great. And that's really where he had his most success on the ground. And then the other thing is, you saw a clear difference when Gordon was in and when Eckler was in. I love Eckler. Like, he's a better receiver than Gordon is, and I think he's a really good player. But Gordon, I think, is still the better guy on the ground when it comes to creating big plays. I think what Gordon has that Eckler doesn't have is that extra gear to create a 40-yard touchdown, a 50-yard rushing touchdown. Eckler doesn't quite have that next gear in his arsenal. So that's what Gordon's going to give you along with Phillip Lindsay, two really fast backs when they touch the football. But Gordon is going to give you a guy that can carry the ball 20 to 30 times in a game if you need him to. And then you can put Lindsay in for those explosive runs that he's known for. And they're both great in the screen game. They're both great in receiving and running. So when you take one out for the other, you're not really missing anything. I feel like this is a clear, huge upgrade over Royce Freeman, who I was never really a huge fan of. And we'll have to see where he goes into the future. But Melvin Gordon, I like him as a player. I think he's going to succeed in Denver. I'm looking forward to see how they utilize him within the offense. But I think this was a pretty good signing from the Broncos, giving their young quarterback a compliment on the ground with Melvin Gordon, and now one of the best running back duos in the league. Melvin Gordon stays in the AFC West, sticking it to the Chargers and signing with the Denver Broncos. There we go. There it is. Hot take says Drew Lock for MVP. And on that note, I'll leave you there. Thanks, guys, for joining me live. Those are the breakdowns of free agency on March 20th. That's today, Friday, 2020. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL vids just like this. And if you're watching this after the fact, don't forget to comment your opinion about your team's moves today. Thanks. It's been Mitch of the Bottom Line View. We'll see you maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, but we'll see you soon. Check out the free agency reactions playlist for all of my free agency reactions. Peace.